Welcome back to the channel, everybody. To start off the year of Sanderson, I wanted to start off with the 5 things that I think are necessary to make a Mistborn adaptation really successful. Now, Brandon himself has confirmed that he has been writing a screenplay for Mistborn, and in the recent months he's hinted that he's been in talks with a lot of production companies trying to get either this or just the general Cosmere off the ground. I've always been of the opinion that Mistborn is a really hard book to adapt to a movie format. So let's talk about why and the 5 things that I think need to be done to make this really good and feel like the Mistborn we all know and love. Now, as we talk about these 5 things, I'm going to go in order from the most difficult obstacles that they need to overcome to the least difficult. So that's kind of the order that I'm going in. Please be aware that this video will contain heavy spoilers for the first book in the Mistborn series. I won't really talk about the Well of Ascension or the Hero of Ages very much. I will keep in mind the entire series as a whole and kind of looking forward to the future, but we won't talk about specifics of the other books or get into spoilers for any of those. Starting us out at number 1, the most difficult obstacle I think that they'll need to overcome to make this adaptation a success is presenting a really good way of representing allomancy. This sounds really simple, just, when you say it, but there's a lot more depth to it when you really think about it. Allomancy is not something that is easy to show. Things like Atium and the 11th metal have to be shown. Their effects have to be shown. It's pivotal to the story. Some of the allomantic powers can be shown really well on screen without having to do much. Things like pewter and tin, where you either can enhance your strength or enhance your senses respectively. Those are things that you can show really well without having to do a whole lot. But there are some other allomantic powers that aren't quite as easy to represent. Things like emotional allomancy. When someone plays with emotional allomancy, especially when you have someone like Breeze who can do it really well, so well that most people don't know that they are being influenced at all. How do you deal with that? The only way to really show that in an effective way is maybe to have the actors change their facial expressions. But if you go too overboard with that, it ends up being really cheesy and makes it look like, Breeze doesn't know what he's doing and is just pushing too hard, doesn't stay as true to the source material. Other things like copper that hides allomantic powers. If you throw up a physical visualization of a copper cloud, you've lost me. That, I think, will look really cheesy. So is that something that you just explain as they set up club's shop? Oh, this is what copper does. But how do you show when someone has copper on? Or how do you show that someone may be burning bronze? And, there are some other kind of metals and powers that go with those a little later in the other books that I won't get into. But those are really difficult to show without getting really cheesy. So it's a very fine line. What do you show and how do you show it? I don't know. I don't have those answers, but I think it's something that you really need to consider before actually making the adaptation, because if you do it wrong, it could be done in a really cheesy way that just is not appealing and it just doesn't feel like allomancy at that point. Now, the second thing needed to make this adaptation work really well is a creative way of integrating Alendi's text into the movie. The incorporation of Alendi's text, we get snippets of it at the beginning of each chapter in the book. And it's honestly one of my favorite things about the book. It was something that was really creative. You are kind of piecing together 2 different stories at the same time to see how they come together for a final resolution at the climax. You learn who the Lord Ruler is, and you learn about his downfall. Really epic. I remember being stunned the first time that I read it. But how do you incorporate that into a movie? There's a lot of information in that text, given that we get a little piece at the beginning of each chapter. One idea I have for this is the use of title cards. Now, title cards aren't frequently used in movies anymore. I think the most recent movie to make utilization of them was Nope by Jordan Peele. And I think it could work really well. Brandon Sanderson does chop his books up into parts. I believe in Mistborn there's 5 parts. I could be wrong on that. But it's split up into parts, and you could do this in the movie. And in each part, there's a new title card with an important section of the text. And you may not really understand what's going on with that text until, obviously the climax, like in the book. However, that would make a really interesting way to make the movie where each part, each section, following the title card is almost a movie unto itself in a shortened miniature version. I think this would be a really creative way to avoid flashbacks but still get the pertinent information across. All right, the third thing to make this adaptation work really well is I need things to stay dark. And that has a double meaning. The first meaning has to do with the setting. Scadrial is not a tourist destination. Let's leave it at that, right? There's the ash mounts everywhere. The sun is pretty frequently blocked by the ash in the sky and the clouds. There's just a lot of darkness, and it's dirty, it's gritty, it's gross. It's not somewhere you want to be. I'm afraid that for viewing pleasure, they'll brighten things up a little bit, and I don't want that. I want a true Scadrial where things are dark and gritty and dirty. Now, the other part of that is thematically. I want it to be dark. I recently reread Mistborn to get ready for the second era. I hadn't read the second era of Mistborn yet, and I was reminded just how dark this series is. It is not really for children. There is a lot of death, a lot of torture, a lot of despair, and I think that's important to the story. Kelsier is not a good role model. He slaughters people left and right. He does whatever he thinks is necessary to reach his goal. And when you take that out, you take away pieces of the story. I don't think this will happen. My vote is a rated R Mistborn movie. I doubt that will happen. I'm guessing it will be PG-13 to try and appeal to the younger YA audiences. But I believe that will be at the expense of what Kelsier is, what he stands for, and what the ultimate goal of Mistborn is. All right, fourth is a bit more generic, admittedly so. It's not something that you'll see as much in the movie, but if Mistborn truly is the first adaptation, this needs to set up the Cosmere. I know that Sanderson has said he would love to do the Cosmere as a whole, as an adaptation, and this is where things get set up. There has been a lot going on with the DC EU, the DC Extended Universe, and that is in shambles right now. That's because they didn't plan appropriately. They didn't have a good plan moving forward, who was going to do what the story was going to look like. And because of that, they had people dropping out left and right. Causes for a lot of problems. So this is a good opportunity to let people know, hey, this is what we're trying to do with the Cosmere. If you're hired for this role, you're going to be expected to be in XYZ, things that relate to the Cosmere on a broader scale. It's not a one movie job like you might think it is. For some characters, obviously, it may be. But when you're looking at the grand scale of things and characters that have large roles in the Cosmere as a whole, you need to make sure that they are dedicated, because if not, that can cause a lot of problems for the Cosmere as a whole later on. The fifth and final point that will make this adaptation a success is let foreshadowing be foreshadowing. That sounds really simple when I just say it, but a lot of filmmakers who adapt a source material fall into this trap where they take something and they show it probably a little too early. And I'll try and give them some credit and say they're just really excited about the material. Brandon Sanderson in the Mistborn trilogy does a lot of great work with foreshadowing. In Mistborn, he sets up a lot of foreshadowing about creatures in the world, about future allomantic powers, the magic systems as a whole, character arcs, you name it, there's foreshadowing about it. I worry that too much will be shown about the Colossus or Hemalurgy, that it will just take away from the plot of Mistborn. Those things are important to the overall story. They come into effect later for a reason, because the focus really needs to be on the heist and taking down the Lord Ruler. Now, as we come to a close of the video, I've got to share one hot take that I have. I think that Mistborn and just the Cosmere in general is really set up well for an animation adaptation. I know that a lot of people probably don't want that, but based on the magic systems used and the stories told, the worlds involved, I think that if you could perform an animation adaptation to the likes of Arcane, you would have something really special. Not only would it be, really cool to see fights in animation, it would be the first animation to kind of explore this extended universe, at least that I'm aware of. And I think that would be something really unique to try. I know that that's probably not the way that they will go. A lot of people are turned off by animation as a medium, which is really unfortunate. They're missing out on a lot of great stuff. I'm sure they'll choose to go the live action route because that's what brings in the most audiences. But I can't help but think that the Stormlight Archive, Mistborn, Elantris, Warbreaker, all of these lend themselves really well to an animation. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I think that would be, just the perfect way to deliver these stories. But I understand why they'll probably go the live action route. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Let me know what you're most excited for when it comes to a Mistborn adaptation. And let me know what other obstacles you think that they have to overcome. There's a lot out there when you take source material and you turn it into either a TV or a movie. And I'm sure there's things that I've missed. These are the 5 things that I think will contribute most to their success or their failure, depending on how they go about it. But let me know what you guys think. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.